All right, everybody. Good afternoon and happy Sunday. I hope you all had an awesome weekend. Got a little bit of unexpected sunshine. I thought it was going to rain all weekend. And yeah, that you're ready to go and rock this next week. This is our week 8 video update for BC First Pupils. I can't believe that I'm saying week 8 already, that we have been doing this for that long, and that you guys have been doing a really awesome job of staying on top of your stuff and continuing your learning from home. That being said, the first thing I want to talk to you guys this week is the potential for a return to school. As some of you, I hope that most of you know now, that the sign up went live last week for students to sign up to return to school and get some support from their teachers with their learning. The big thing that this means for the course, guys, is that online learning won't stop. We'll continue to do what we're doing and how we've been doing it. Signing up to come into the school just means that you want to sign up for a little extra support from your teacher. It looks really different than what it did before. So for example, in our class, there's only 6 desks. And when you come in, you are sitting at a desk and you're getting support from me on either missing work from before spring break, weekly discussion questions, or independent projects. So those are kind of the 3 big things that you should be working on right now. You should all be caught up on work from before spring break, and then working on either the independent projects for the big ideas or those weekly writing discussion questions. All of that work needs to be completed, guys, for you to be successful in the course. So please do make sure that you are staying on top of all of that. But yeah, so I'm going to show you really quickly how you can sign on. This should have gone out to your parents, but you just go on to school appointments online. The Bolinas homepage, the link that your family should have got should take you right there. And then you can just go to view calendars and book in. So I'm available in the afternoon from 12 till 3. This is largely because I know that most of you don't get out of bed before noon, so I didn't want to make myself available in the morning and have none of you show up. Again, there's 6 of you in at a time, and you're coming in to get extra support. This isn't a time to socialize with your friends. The library's not going to be open. You're not going to be able to hang out at the tables by our classroom. This is purely to come in and get support on any work that you are doing right now. And if you're not there to work, then you will be asked to leave. So just something to think about, guys. If you need that support, like I said, if you're missing a bunch of work from before spring break or missing a ton of those weekly writing opportunities or discussion questions or big idea projects, if you and your family are comfortable, I highly suggest you come in and get some support. It's just a really good time for us to sit down and work through it together. So something to think about. The second thing that I want to talk to you about is that this week I'm not going to be doing check-ins on Monday mornings. Just this week. Next week I will. But again, I'll only be available for check-ins in the mornings from now on because I will have students in the afternoon. So I will post next week the check-in list for that week, and you'll be able to sign up, but there'll be less time slots, so it'll be kind of on first come first serve, and then you can always sign up to come in and work with me if you've kind of got bigger questions. But this week, this Monday, so tomorrow, I'm going to be contacting home about I-plans. For those of you who've never heard about an I-plan before, it basically, I put an I-plan in place for you if you have completed less than enough work for me to say that you can be given credit for the course. So the Ministry of Education mandates big ideas, curricular competencies, and content. And through the various assignments and work that you do in the class, you demonstrate an understanding of those things. So if you haven't completed enough work for me to tick off those boxes and say, yes, 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 they have an understanding of all these things, then I can't give you credit for the course. So what the I-plan does, it'll be an email to you and your parents or a phone call, and I will say so-and-so has not completed enough work as of right now to receive credit for the course, and then I will provide a list of assignments that you have to complete in order to get credit for the course, and I'll give you a date in which you have to complete that by. Again, if you don't complete the work, you can't get credit for the course. So it's just a plan of action so that you and your family very clearly knows that you are at risk of not completing the course and that you need to do a certain amount of work to be successful. if you're all caught up on work and you're working away, don't worry about it. You're on task. Again, the predominant work will be from before spring break, but some stuff from post spring break will be on there. So yeah, complete stuff from before spring break, weekly discussion questions, and big idea projects. None of this stuff is designed to take you an astronomical amount of time. And remember, I didn't give really hard due dates because I know that you guys are working away and busy on other things. But that being said, the work is important. And if you're struggling with it, come hang with me in 203 for an hour and a half. Get some of this stuff done together. Sometimes you just need to push, and I get it. So what have I talked about? Return to school, booking, no check-ins, plans. Okay, I guess I will talk about this week. This is going to be the last independent project that I assigned to you, and I'm going to pull it up right now. So again, logging onto our Class Galantis page, heading into assignments, you are going to see the Big Idea Independent Project number 3. Again, this is going to be the last independent project that I assigned to you. There was a 4th one, but we kind of covered the Big Idea in first semester, so I'm going to be done with that. But it's this idea that through self-governance and leadership and self-determination, BC First Peoples challenge and resist Canada's ongoing colonialism. And the big word that we're going to highlight there, guys, is self-governance. So basically for this task, you are going to do some research into a First Nation in Canada and talk about the systems of government that they currently have in place. But before we go too far into that, you actually, if you look down at the steps here, the first thing you need to do is complete the discussion question for this week. So the discussion question is always going to be found on the discussion forum. It's week 8. And it actually is going to ask you to define this word self-governance. So what is self-governance, for example, and what does it mean to Indigenous communities? We've all, I hope, have heard the word governance, this idea that there are laws and systems in place that govern people and their actions in society. But what does self-governance mean? And what does it mean to Indigenous people in Canada? So again, the first thing you'll need to do this week, and this is kind of the first time that I've set it up this way, that you have to complete the discussion question before you can really dive into the Big Idea project. But I'm basically, again, asking you to answer this question: what is self-governance and what does it mean for Indigenous communities in Canada? I would like you to write just a short paragraph, 250, 500 words if you're feeling ambitious, about what self-governance is and what it means to Indigenous communities in Canada. Keeping in mind that currently there are systems of government in place that are very colonial, European, in Canada, that largely govern Indigenous communities. So maybe keeping in mind what it looks like for Indigenous communities to take that power back. So I've given you, you need to do some research, and I've given you some places to start. So there's a couple different YouTube videos here that you can watch. Some are examples of self-governance, or talking about methods to getting to self-governance. There's one from the Prime Minister, from the Canada Modern Treaty and Self-Governing First Nations Forum. They're not hugely long videos, and they might not give you all the information that you need, so you might have to do some outside research. But again, answering this question: what is self-governance and what does it mean to Indigenous people in Canada? So that's the first step. For the independent project, you have to go back and complete the week 8 discussion question and the discussion forum, and then you can move on. So Big Idea Independent Project 3. So step 1, complete week 8 discussion question. Step 2, watch this video where I introduce self-governance and important terms. And when I say important terms, I mean this PowerPoint here. So this PowerPoint contains a lot of terminology that you might find in your research. And so if you're doing research and you're having a hard time, you can always go back to this PowerPoint. So again, why should we learn about First Nations government? So it's important to recognize that First Nations were here first in Canada, and they did have their own forms of land stewardship, governance, and culture before Europeans came and introduced very colonial systems of governance. And then early relations between First Nations and European settlers, including treaties, form a part of the constitutional fabric of Canada. And then this idea that reconciliation is ongoing between First Nations, the Crown government, so current governments, and others. and that they need to address and overcome negative impacts of colonialism. So think about the Indian Act and how the Indian Act was put in place, and put in place laws to govern Indigenous people, their land. So they put them on reserves, residential schools, took away their culture, etc. That's a system of government that was imposed on Indigenous people, and it was as if Europeans thought that there was no systems in place already, which is incorrect. Like we said in the first statement there, Indigenous communities and First Nations were here first, and they had their own systems of government that worked. And so when the Indian Act and Europeans came and put the Indian Act in place, that kind of took that away from Indigenous communities. So that's kind of where Indigenous communities were at previously in Canada, and so let's take a look at where they're at today and kind of what's happening to change these things. And yeah, so this PowerPoint just goes through a couple different terms: consensual systems of government, hereditary systems, band councils is another one that might come up for you, self-governance agreements, treaty-based governments, and then tribal councils or regional governments. So that's all different terminologies that I've defined for you here that might pop up in your research when you look into completing this project. So again, complete the week 8 discussion question, define the term self-governments and what it means to Indigenous Canadians. Watch this video where I show you where to find some of those terms that might come up. And then you're going to select a First Nations group that you would like to profile. So again, I'd like you to stick to BC, local, even better. What are the First Nations around our community doing in terms of governance and self-governance? And then you're going to use the First Nations governance profile below to guide your research into your specific nation. For the most accurate information, you're going to want to go to that nation's website. Most of these First Nations have their own website that they highlight. So let me just see if I can find an example here. Let's go Qualicum First Nation. Typing it into my Google search. Let's see if it wants to go. And yeah, so the Qualicum First Nation has their own website that we can go to, qualicumfirstnation.com. Pretty straightforward. You can find most First Nations just by a simple Google search. And there you can find a lot of information about that particular nation. And of course, my thing is not loading, so we'll leave it at that for right now. But yeah, and if you aren't sure of certain terms that you're coming up with, again, refer back to that PowerPoint or Google them, see what comes up. And then you're going to actually fill out the First Nations governance profile, which is below. So the first section, confirm, so what is the nation of your choosing? Look for their community names. So some communities have proper names in the local language and also have English names. So for example, it wouldn't be incorrect to say the Nanoose First Nation, but the traditional community name is the Stanawas First Nation. So what is their community name? So an acknowledgement, what's the proper way to acknowledge that First Nation? So I might say, I acknowledge that I live and work on the shared territory of the Qualicum and Stanawas First Nation. Location, be specific. Nation or tribal affiliation, so what larger group of the community or local First Nation is affiliated with. So for example, Old Masset First Nation is a member of the Haida Nation. You could also say that the Qualicum and Nanoose First Nations are part of the Coast Salish nations. And then looking at the First Nations language that is spoken, so what's the proper name of the language that's spoken? And again, be super specific if you can. And then words about governance in the First Nations language, so talk about the land or histories, the laws, oral histories, chief, and other leader titles. The traditional form of government, you can read about that there. The current form, so is it still using the traditional forms? My computer hates me today. Or are they using a more colonial construct? So band councils versus hereditary chiefs, etc., etc. And then, yeah, other interesting information. I'm going to run out of time here, guys, but if you have any questions, obviously send me an email and book in with me if you need some support. Talk to you soon, guys. Bye.